Now, supply curve shifts are a little bit easier to think about because it really all boils down to one thing, with the exception of, well, the main ones boil down to one thing, which is how expensive is the thing to produce, right? Supply is all about production. You take something, you do something to it, and then you sell it. There's a lot of things that do something to it could be, but basic idea is you are taking some sort of input, turning it into some sort of output, and then selling that out, right? And we know that the supply curve represents the marginal cost, right? So at a given quantity, the supply curve is representing what it costs to produce that single unit, right? We're talking about the cost of producing one single unit. That's the marginal part. Marginal meaning sort of one more. So anything that changes that production cost, anything that makes it so that it's cheaper to get one unit to you is going to, by definition, move this around, right? Something gets cheaper to produce, then you're not going to need to get paid as much to do it. So we can think of a couple different ways in which this is going to play out. One of them is, I mean, these are pretty obvious. One is input prices. If you've got to take some inputs, turn them into outputs that you can sell. If those inputs get cheaper, well, then your costs just went down, right? So if the cost of making something increases, then the marginal cost of production is going to increase, which is going to diminish supply. You're going to need to get paid more to produce the same amount as before. Increase in production costs is going to reduce supply. I keep using the example of cars. The price of steel goes down, then cars get cheaper to produce. That's going to be a rightward shift in supply, right? Because you're not going to need to. It's not going to be as expensive to make cars. You're not going to need to get paid as much to do it. Similar idea, technology. In economics, technology means literally anything that affects that production process, right? I just mentioned we take inputs, we do something to them to turn them into outputs that we sell. That do something to them is our technology. Whatever it is that takes inputs and turns them into outputs is technology, which could be actual technology like machines and computers and stuff, but it could even be like management techniques. You bring in a new management technique that makes all your workers 20% more productive. Well, that's not really any different than buying a machine that makes your workers 20% more productive, right? Makes you more productive. So if technology gets better, you can get more output out of the same inputs, then we say technology improves. That makes things cheaper to produce, which is going to be a rightward shift in supply, right? You can get more out of your inputs. It's cheaper to make your stuff then, which means that you don't need to get paid as much to sell it. Supply is going to shift to the right. Beyond this, we get ones that are basically the same as what we saw on the demand side. Expectations shows up again, right? So if you think the price is going to rise in the future, and you don't want to sell now, you want to wait until the price goes up, and then you will sell then, right? Example of the stock market. If you suspect that a stock's price is going to fall, you're not going to wait until that happens to sell it. You're going to sell it now, right? So, for example, if you think that Evergrande is going to fail, Chinese company Evergrande, then you might want to sell some of your stocks now rather than waiting for that to happen. That's what I did. So the only thing that's different about this side as opposed to the demand side is that the directions change, right? If you think that the price is going to go up in the future, then you're going to want to buy now but sell later, right? And so again, both of those things are going to make that price shift happen now. So price, you expect the price is going to go up. We'll see how that's going to work out. There's price before. You expect the price is going to go up in the future. You're going to be like, well, I'm not going to sell now. I'm going to wait till the price goes up. So that's going to reduce supply for now, which can make the price go up immediately rather than waiting for that actual change in the future. Which is why when I sold my stocks, I probably did not get the full amount that I would get if Evergrande does go down, because everyone else has already priced that in to their expectations of stock prices. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute, we just shifted supply, but I also told you that expectations are going to shift demand too. And I haven't drawn that here. We'll get to it soon. Okay. Lastly, number of suppliers. Just like with the buyer side, the number of buyers, if the number of suppliers changes, that's going to shift supply around. For the same reasons, I mean, this is not a surprise. This one does turn out to be a bit more important than it is on the demand side. It's not that often or that big of a driver of shifts in demand that you get more more or fewer consumers. But people move in and out of markets all the time as suppliers, right? You know, what's going to change the number of suppliers? Well, new companies being founded. That happens all the time, right? Or companies moving into a new space, right? That also happens all the time. Number of suppliers is going to shift around quite a bit. That's going to really affect our supply curve. And what you'll find when we get to competitive production very soon, you'll find that that's what's going to drive a lot of long-term market dynamics. So this one's going to be a lot more important than it is on the demand side. One example of this, think about the supply of photographs, right? What happened to the number of suppliers of photographs since they invented the smartphone with the camera in it? Well, now there's a lot more suppliers of photographs than there were before. You can imagine what that's going to do to the supply of photographs. We would predict a very big shift and you'd expect you're going to get way more photographs, which we definitely have. And then also people aren't going to be willing to pay as much for it, which is hard to figure out because, you know, there's who was really paying for photographs before, except for professional photographs, and the supply of that hasn't shifted as much. But anyway, price would expect to go down as well. Supply shifts didn't take as long to go over as the demand shifts. It's because they're all relatively straightforward. The basic idea is the costs go down, the supply shifts to the right, costs go up, the supply shifts to the left, and then you toss in some stuff about expectations and number of suppliers, which we already covered anyway.